Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors, your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning and welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. We're glad you're with us today. I'm Bill Allen. We got a great show lined up for you on this Friday with a Friday fishing report and some tips. Also want to wish Winston well this morning. He's not sick or anything, but he is over in St. Vincent's Island on a primitive weapons hunt, and I sure do envy him. But I hope he has a great time and they're safe over there, and I know he will. Let's get to the weather today, brought to us by Haney Technical Center. We're looking at, hey, it's cool. It's going to be cool for the next few days. High today is only going to be 45 with the wind north-northeast out of 10. And as always, you can add a little bit to that, but shouldn't be too bad. With a low tonight around 33 and the wind kind of easing off later in the afternoon. We're gonna go ahead and go to our first break now. Got a real special guest. We got a lot of information for you, and we'll see you back in just a minute. Welcome back. We're glad you're with us. I am joined this morning by my good friend and occasional fishing partner when we get the opportunity, Mark Cowart. Mark, how are you this morning?
Good, Bill. It's great to see you this morning.
I'm glad you came in with us. Mark also is a sponsor of the show with your Edgewater Realty, and you know, I know in my business, and I see, you know, trends in the economy and things like that. Real estate's picking up, huh?
Real estate is, it's remarkable to watch the people who for years have sat on the sidelines, and I'm talking about the locals, the people that live within 40, 50, 60 miles of here, how in the last 8 or 9 months they've jumped into the market and are taking advantage of these lower prices.
Yeah. And interest rates.
Oh my gosh. You know, they're able to buy a second home now cheaper. They're able to afford a second home, literally a place at the beach, and that they live 20 minutes from for the first time in years, and be able to get a loan. The rates are good, the prices are good, and again, as the market appreciates, which right now we were talking about it just yesterday, it's appreciating at 8 to 12% a year. So a guy can buy today, 3 years down the road, he's made 25 to 35% on his money.
It's a good investment.
It
good
sure
return
is.
on investment.
Absolutely.
But, you know, Mark is a sponsor of Winston and the show here, and I know that's been good for you.
It has. It's really been.
It's amazing at the number of people who watch this show. I mean, they'll stop us in boat ramps and in stores, and even the limited times that we're on. Of course, Winston can't go anywhere.
I'm sure.
But it's tremendous following, and I know Winston said it. If you know somebody out there that has a business here that wants to get out to a lot of people like us, if you consider us good people, but people like us who fish in the outdoors in Joy Bay County, it's a great show to get behind.
It is. It's remarkable how far away you can be. I've been in Dothan. Somebody's commented on a show. Tallahassee, somebody's commented on a show. Pensacola, not long ago, somebody commented on the crappie show we shot last year. Just last week, or about 10 days ago, I got a phone call from Tallahassee, a guy watching it on Winston's YouTube channel, asking me about the water temperatures of that trip.
Yeah, it was pretty outside. I really enjoyed that, and it's getting that time where we were talking about that the other day when we were out fishing. So, but anyway, you know, it's a great opportunity, great exposure to good people who enjoy this part of the country. And if you're thinking about it or know somebody, get in touch with Winston. It's a great place to be. All right, today's Friday, and this show is basically, the whole show is going to be a famous Friday fishing report, because we've had the opportunity to get out a couple of times here just recently and find some really good fish. Yeah,
don't think that this cold weather has stopped the redfish from being active. Most people this time of year are jumping on trout. You know, Bill is a winter trout expert. There's no doubt about it. Matter of fact, you know, we've gone and we've done extremely well. But we found redfish who are actively feeding. And we're talking big numbers of big redfish in very, very shallow water, which surprises everybody. But just the other day, I mean, it was a great example this last Sunday.
Yeah, it was just a tremendous example on Sunday afternoon. And that's kind of where we're going to focus on the next couple of segments. And that being all part of the fishing report, we're going to talk about West Bay. But now Mark had mentioned the trout fishing, and Well, let's go ahead and talk about Apalachicola over there, especially in you know, the Little St. Marks and those rivers. Greg and I made a trip over there last week, and like Mark said, we've been over there 3 or 4 times and just had tremendous trips. We got over there and did not catch a trout in all those places that we went.
Yeah, that's hard to believe.
Well, you know, that when that water in the river gets up, it makes it a little more difficult. But we had that extremely cold weather. And in those creeks, those tributaries that feed into the bay, one in particular, that Bob Jones Cut, I've said it many times, you know, it's one of my favorite spots in and around there in Goat Island. The amount of dead mullet out there that had frozen in that shallower water, they were floating everywhere. They were just, you know, they'd been there for a week. Not enough tide to really pull them out. And, you know, when the tide was up, now they're hung up in the reeds when it's falling. You know, there are buzzards everywhere. You know, I had to tell Greg to move around a couple of times. I thought they were coming after us. But and I talked to my son Dalton, who is a wildlife biologist and, as you know, an excellent fisherman like your son. And he's saying with that many fish in the water dead, that it just totally changed the pH for that whole system.
That's just remarkable.
And it does make sense, you know, and Greg and I had talked about it. I mean, it's just not a single trout. Now, we did manage to catch, I think, 4 or 5 redfish that day, you know, and they're a little hardier. So, you know, if you're planning a trip down there, you know, I'd hold off at this point a week or two, you know, in the Little St. Marks, the Goat Island area and stuff like that, and allow that to kind of flush out a little bit and those mullet to get out of there.
Right.
Because, I mean, you know, we've caught some tremendous trout every time.
Unbelievable numbers.
And we didn't even catch, you know, what Greg calls aquarium trout. You know, I mean, there was no trout in there at all. And we fished that area. We fished the Goat Island area. We ran all the way back to Chipley Creek. We went in Chipley Creek and just everything that I could think of to try to find one. And, you know, they just weren't there.
Yeah, when you told me about it, of course, like I say, you called our resident biologist, Dalton.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't, when he was telling me about it, I was wondering, was it because of the real high water up north or for Bluntstown? But I went back and started thinking about what you said, that freeze several years ago that killed the snook down south, killed a lot of mullet in our bay, and fishing just died off because of it.
Yeah, it just completely changes everything down there. And so it's tough right now. I'd hold, that's the Goat Island report. I'd hold off for 2 or 3 weeks and let some of that flush out. I mean, they're just not there. So let's go ahead and take our first break, and then we're going to come back with some little bit of West Bay fishing. Hey, welcome back. Again, I'm here with Mark Cowart, and you know, we're going to talk a little bit about West Bay. Now, we were very fortunate last Sunday to be able to get out, you know, together and fish West Bay. And, you know, well, let's just talk about how we started out.
Okay, well, you know, the Sunday before, Michael and I had gone out, my son Michael and I had gone out, and we caught 13 redfish that day. Very shallow water, dark bottom on the north end of West Bay.
Right.
And, you know, we kept wanting to go out. Bill called me Sunday morning and said it's going to be identical to what happened last week. The only difference was there was not as much water and the wind was blowing out of the north versus the south.
Yeah.
So we head up to where Michael and I had caught some fish. No water, none at all. We worked around, found a few redfish, actually scattered a bunch of redfish early.
They were really spooky.
Yeah, it was something, but there were a lot of redfish. There were a lot of redfish moving around. Yeah. So anyway, you know, I catch one, Bill catches one. We talk about it. We're trying to get back where we know the fish are. We can't get in there. We work our way out, and we make a decision. And I said to Bill several times, I said, maybe we need to go to the other side of the bay where the wind's blowing the water up. I know one spot that I hadn't fished all winter that's got a dark bottom. And I sure am glad we went back there.
Yeah, you were right. You know, where we were, and you know, it's just anywhere outside of Burnt Mill Creek over there in those areas. The water's a little bit warmer, you know, and you had done it. You and Michael had caught all those fish. And we were casting, you know, to where those fish were.
Right.
they just weren't feeding at the
No.
time. You know, they're up there sunning, and you know, like I said, we catch a couple of little rats.
Yeah.
And you know, we were in Mark's boat, and of course, you know, and Mark made the call. So we run across the bay looking for dark bottom, looking for marsh. You know, it's going to warm up quicker, and we were in a familiar place that we fished a lot. But like I said, I
hadn't fished at all. I hadn't fished since last fall.
Little bit out of the wind over there when we got there, and see absolutely no movement at all.
Yeah, water's crystal clear. We're in a foot and a half of water, and
now it's about 3:15,
3:30, and we know we got an hour and a half to fish.
Yeah. So we start a drift. Mark sets up a nice little drift where we can reach, you know, into the edges of those marshes and little creeks that go back. And I guess we were coming up where 2 or 3 of them, you know, converge together.
Right, there's 3.
And, you know, Mark's fishing a little more on the outside. I'm throwing a little bit more on the inside. I throw across one of those points, which obviously if you can find a point with moving water, you know, we're just prospecting. I throw across that point, make a long cast, bounce a shrimp a couple of times, which a gulp shrimp, which I'll show you in a minute. And Mark's going to talk about what he was using, what we used to catch these fish. I bounce this thing 2 or 3 times, and I get lit up. And then the world comes apart.
It was one of those moments where, you know, it's like walking along and seeing a $100 bill laying on the ground. You start looking for more. Well, I look up, Bill's fighting this fish, and I look up, and it looks like there's about 4 or 5 torpedoes heading at the boat, and I'm not kidding. I'm talking about they were waked up, and they were coming out. They weren't running out. They're just cruising. And so Bill, there were a lot of oyster shells, a lot of shells on the bottom. Bill gets broke off.
Yeah, get cut off.
He grabs another rod. I go to throw. I get I get untangled. He throws. I throw. We both hook up. And it was that way for the next hour and a half.
There is an inadvertent tip right there. When we go, I've got 3 or 4 rods.
Absolutely.
Mark's got 3 or 4 rods rigged. I got cut off on an oyster shell.
Yep.
Those fish were moving everywhere. All I had to do was reach over and grab another rod and throw back out, and I hooked up again. Now, Mark, once he got his fish settled, and we got those fish settled, when he hits power poles and, you know, puts us in place. And Mark's got 2, so, you know, if it's windy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we're in place. We get settled on those fish. I re-rig the other one. And, you know, this is an important part about it, is how we work those fish, or how we let those fish work us. You know, instead of, you know, Mark jumping on the trolling motor and chasing those fish around and trying to hunt them down, which I've said 1,000 times does not work.
Ever.
We sat there, kind of surveyed it. Everything went back to slick calm.
It did.
And then all of a sudden, in the back of now the creek in the middle more, here comes all these ripples, you know, all these waves. Now, we never saw a fin. We never saw a tail. All we see is just, you know, a 10-yard square of water moving, maybe, or bigger. So Mark gets out ahead of them early, gets a bait on the bottom that we're going to talk about in a minute. I get out on the other side, get ahead of them early. Boom, we both get lit up again.
Absolutely.
But now, what was the cool thing about the fish? Instead of scattering,
yeah, they turned around, went right back where they were, and you know, to them, those fish were feeding, and it wasn't, you know, we're not running around in the boat, we're not making any noise, we're fighting the fish back to the boat, and the good thing is these fish, when they would hook, they would leave the school, and ironically, 1 or 2 fish would follow that hooked fish. But it wasn't like we had to throw on top of each other, because as long as you were out in front of that, when the school is moving, as long as you will get in front of the school, let the fish come to the bait. Don't bring the bait to them, because there's nothing natural going to come to that school of redfish.
Very true. That's very true. And, you know, whether it's dumb luck or experience, there's no other place we could cast, you know, unless you threw right in the middle of them, which is never profitable.
No.
So we're getting out in front of them, and we start noticing that, and we're all seeing is ripples, is they're moving from one little, let's call it pond or creek. A few of them move into the other one. But none of them, folks, are coming out into the open water
No.
that we're fishing in. So, you know, very important here is, you know, we're getting a bait out early when they start to move, and we're not sitting there when they're not moving. We're not just hammering, putting baits in the water and you know, with the potential to spook these fish. You know, if you're in a school of redfish and they're feeding and they're working, the worst thing you can do, the two worst things, is try to chase them.
Right. Don't
let
do
them
that.
work. If they're, you know, let them come back and forth, because that's their pattern lots of times. And the other is just don't hammer the water with baits.
Right. There's three keys to this. Is that when you run into a situation like we ran into, we've done it before, but never in this quality of fish, in this quantity of fish. The first time you get a chance to position the boat, you better get it right. Yeah. Because the moment that you go to moving around, you're spooking the fish.
That's very true.
And we were fortunate enough that we were able to hit the right spot the first time.
Yeah, oh, buddy, were we. All right, we're going to come back and talk about, you know, what we use to catch those fish, and we'll go from there. Let's take this quick break. Hey, welcome back. Let's go quickly go into taking care of some business here, and let's talk about tides today. The high tide is going to be at 3:41 p.m. this afternoon. Still don't have the water's not moving great, but it's starting to move a little bit better after we come off this moon. Low tide at 1:50 this morning, so it's kind of flipped around a little bit. We're looking at the peak fishing times brought to us by Mark Coward at Edgewater Realty, and today it's 5:45 this morning to 7:45 this morning, and then this evening 6:15 to 9:15. Now, Mark, let's talk about before we run. Oh, let's get to the. I got to do some business here. Look, folks, you got to send some stuff in, because these people are really happy that you hadn't. Winston starts over every year, and there's not too many in here, so we'll get Mark to draw for the red snapper.
Okay.
Okay. This is red snapper. Pick one out. Bill Allen.
Candy Cassell.
Candy Cassell from Lynn Haven. Okay, that's your red snapper. And then the $20 gift certificate from Tarpon Dock Seafood, folks.
Renita White, Defuniak Springs.
All right, Defuniak Springs and Lynn Haven. That's what we were just talking about. Wide viewing area.
That's
here.
exactly right.
Congratulations on that. Now, real quick, because, you know, again, we could talk, you know, forever doing this, but let's talk about what you were using and how you were using it. Because right behind me here is Jim Wynn, a good friend of mine, better known as Jim Dooley, that we all grew up with on the radio. He's always talking about, you guys are talking about what you use, but, you know, I'm using the same thing and maybe not catching it. So he said, go into a little more detail.
Okay.
So, Jim, if you're over there on the radio this morning, this is for you, buddy.
All right, well, let me tell you that the first key to this time of year, I do believe, is a scented bait. We use Procure. Both Bill and I are big advocates of that. Like Michael says, you're not using Procure, you're not fishing. I use Z-Man products, which most of the Z-Mans have the Procure scent embedded in it. And then they slime it with it in the package, which my hands smell like that right now. There's three baits here. One of them is this Z-Man shrimp. As you'll see, this shrimp, very lifelike. Pinfish aren't going to pull it apart. You can pull this thing and nothing's going to happen to it. The great thing about this bait, you can rig it with a weighted swim bait hook, which is perfect for this, but the way this is designed, there's a channel that runs in the tail. Bill has always rigged his shrimp gulp backwards, which is because that's how these fish move. I mean, it's how these things swim. This is rigged perfect. It throws well. Medium to medium light setup, perfect for this. That right there you can throw, and when you hop it, it looks natural coming off the bottom. They love this. This is a great bait. The second bait is a Z-Man jerk shad. Now, if you'll notice, there's a pattern here in these colors because these fish are feeding primarily on mudworms. Which absolutely shocked me. The other day they were in the bottom of the boat.
They were spitting up. They had eaten so many of them and digging them out of. And this is important. We're fishing low and slow.
Absolutely.
And kicking up a little bit of that mud when you're fishing these baits down. And, you know, I start looking in the bottom of the boat, and they're so full, they're you know, putting out these sandworms that they've been eating on.
Yeah, it was really shocking.
All of these fish.
So I rigged this the exact same way. is that I rigged the Z-Man shrimp, the Z-Man jerk shad. Is the great thing about this thing is that it, again, is tough. It isn't going to tear. You can catch multiple fish on it. I'm rigging it and throwing it out just like I'm hopping a worm on the bottom bass fishing. Now, another thing that you can do, you can take a finesse worm and rig it with a weighted jig lead head, like a jig head, rig it weedless, and hop this along the bottom. Or you could rig it like with a swim bait hook, and do the same thing. Something that is very important here, these fish are very strong. You want to use a superline hook, a hook designed for superline, because you're going to bend these hooks out on these fish if you got the wrong hook. So just don't use your standard necessarily bass hook for doing this. It'll work. If you fight the fish, you'll be fine. Yeah. But if you're going to muscle him in, it's going to be difficult.
And that's what Mark was fishing that very effectively over there. We had a couple of different things rigged, but now Jim, here again for you, this rod is the rod that I use to fish one thing and one thing only. Okay, this is a 7.5 foot medium heavy TFO rod. Okay, and I'm big on those TFO rods. It's got 20-pound Power Pro, but let me put it this way: medium heavy, but these TFO rods have a fast tip.
Right.
Okay. And this is the biggest reel I've got. Most of my reels are 2,500, 3,000. I've got a 4,000 Stratic on this one because this is what I call my big fish rod. But now the weighted hooks like Mark have got with the spring load. This is one of those Captain Joe's edge hooks. But all I do is I'll take a gulp shrimp, a 4-inch gulp shrimp, and basically, thread it on here, which I've got this all over me this morning, and bring the hook back up. So, this is what we're looking at. This is what the shrimp looks like. I read about this. It's not something I came up with. But you can make a really long cast with that and get to a lot of places. So we talked a lot this morning. I hope you enjoyed the show. We got to get out of here, and I appreciate you guys watching.
Thanks for joining us for Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors features hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.